Hello, Wolves fans. Bit of an impromptu kind of video, given the malaise that appears to have set in at Wolverhampton Wanderers at the moment. Coming to you off the back of Michael Beale rejecting the club's approach, deciding to stay at Queen's Park Rangers, where he currently has them top of the Championship. And to be honest, kind of despairing at the way the Wolves senior management are approaching the recruitment drive, if you can call it that, to replace Bruno Lage. And I think it's worth kind of considering the timeline of events at this stage. Now, Bruno was actually sacked post West Ham on the 2nd of October. I'm talking to you now on the 20th of October, which is coming up to 3 weeks since that actually happened. Now, first port of call is wondering about the timing of the sacking as it happens. If he was only one game away from the sack during an international break, when you had 2 weeks of football, of no football whatsoever, to actually conduct some kind of process, some kind of discussions with potential suitors, then why wasn't the trigger pulled prior to that international break? Now, the game kind of ended up going as we probably expected it to. Some good bits, some bad bits, but just a real lack of inspiring attacking play from a team that has lacked it for such a long time now. And I think we all kind of understood the fact that Bruno was not going to be capable of turning around the fortunes of the club. And if one win had come, maybe it would have been a scratchy one, such as the one against Southampton, such as the one we actually ended up getting with Steve Davis in charge against Nottingham Forest as well. So really kind of questions the timing of that decision. Now, that led us to really put our eggs in the basket of Julian Lopetegui, who, for a number of reasons, the stars were aligning around this. And yes, there's probably a sense of misfortune around the fact that his father's ill health has ultimately led him to considering taking a break from football altogether, which is totally within his rights and 100% the best thing for him to do at this point, rather than stressing himself with a move to a different country and a new job and all the things that come with that. But from that point onwards, it has just been an absolute mess, frankly. Then the natural George Mendes cabal of managers have been brought up as potential replacements. The likes of Pedro Martins, Leonardo Jardim has come up as a potential. Carlos Carvalhal was even mentioned at one point, and you wonder, okay, if we're all in on this Mendes approach, like we have been with Nuno, like we were with Bruno, like we have been with the core of the playing squad, maybe that a natural successor will kind of emerge from that group of managers that Mendes has within his catalogue. Then you get all this talk about Nuno potentially returning as well. That felt like us really reverting to kind of the bottom rung of the ladder within the Mendes options, aside from the real kind of, unattainable or otherwise just unsuitable candidates that Mendes might have from lower league teams, from other Portuguese sides and players management that have really kind of just fallen off the cliff in terms of their careers. And you start to think, well, where are we going with this? Is this just a bit of a panic situation? And subsequently, I think there have been decisions made and turns taken that maybe have actually been led by a degree of fan revolt around this, names emerging in the media, and ultimately fan sentiment is being taken up as the reason why we've not pursued them. There was obviously a very mixed bag around the mention of Nuno returning, people referencing past glories. I, for one, wouldn't have gone anywhere near him, just based on, especially actually his time in charge of Spurs. But we then decide at this point to actually go totally off piste. The next name that came about was Peter Bosch, who was a former Ajax, Leverkusen and Borussia Dortmund manager, famed for attacking football, but totally reckless defensively. Again, a lot of the sentiment around European football journalists was sought from the fan base. A lot of people really kind of taking a bit of a bit of a not a dislike to Bosch's name being mentioned with the job. And then you lead yourself to Michael Beale. Now, all the signs were pointing towards Michael Beale actually taking the role. He had the small matter of a match to play yesterday for QPR. Subsequently won that 3-0. Has Queen's Park Rangers top of the league, whilst having to deal with all the speculation around it, the seeming formality actually that Beale would actually decide to take up the option to manage Wolves, and having formally approached them to then be rebuffed, really, really kind of sticks a dagger into the whole process that has gone on, if you can call it a process, to actually put a manager in charge at Wolves. Now, how you get from Julian Lopetegui to someone like Pedro Martins to Nuno to Peter Bosch and then ultimately to Michael Beale is anybody's guess. That sequence of managers, almost, if you was to ask a question of, who named the next manager in the sequence, would almost, inexplicably lead you to probably saying someone like Sean Dyche. It's that much of a random collection of styles, experience, and just suitability to what job we need a manager to come in and do. I think people ultimately liked the idea of us going down the Michael Beale route. It was progressive, it was forward thinking, it wasn't paying too much mind to a series of results. Obviously, he's only paid 15 managers at QPR as a head coach, but subsequently there seems to be this suggestion that we've got a list of foreign-based managers and a list of British-based managers, Michael Beale being the top of the British-based managers list. And you wonder, well, why do we have two separate lists? It makes no sense to me at all that you would have a short list of people based overseas, because there's no synergy clearly between the two of them. I mean, it's anybody's guess as to who features on those lists, but it just seems like such a muddled way of doing things. And whilst I appreciate that fan sentiment is important to football clubs, it's important to understand what the fans want from their football team, because ultimately we're going to be the ones that are filling the stadiums and things like that. It actually feels like it's come to a slight detriment to the way Fosun and the leadership of the club have actually gone about seeking out a new manager. And it's like, have we got such a whimsical approach to this that we will change and turn on off the back of a few negative tweets, a few negative social media points? Now, a well-structured, well-run club would have had a list of candidates that they were keeping an eye on, as they would with a player, and probably sort them out, maybe even in the last days of the Lage regime, and just got a bit of a feel for whether they were willing to move, whether they were available to speak to, whether things were going on in their personal life to actually make them a bit more open to shifting their position, whether they be unemployed or employed, and we'll just be a hell of a lot more prepared for this. Now, obviously, we've ended up in this scenario having been rejected by Beale, where I don't know where we go. We have this core of Mendes players at the club. Would that have had anything to do with the fact that Beale rejected us? The recruitment model isn't robust. It is very much, it seems like, Mendes or, relying on, well, it is essentially just relying on Mendes to pull rabbits out of hats. The fact that we ended up with Mateus Nunes in the summer window was great. He's an exceptional player. He seemed out of our reach, but at the same time, he never let us believe that he was an attainable target until there was a slight change in tack. The fact we got Gonzalo Guedes, who I would suggest has not really shown anything of the sort of form that we need him to show. But are we suggesting there weren't alternative options out there from a player recruitment perspective? And has that led us to basically work with one arm tied behind our back when it comes to trying to attract a manager to come and take on this group of players? Because if Michael Beale, from what I've listened to and what I've heard from him, wants to buy into a project, I highly doubt it would be the case that we're going to lean heavily on a super agent to bring players to the club, and Beale's remit would just be to work with those players and expect the fruits of that labour to come to fruition. Bottom line is, he'll want a specific type of player to play a specific style of play. I don't know what style of play we want to attain as a club. I don't know what type of player we really want to recruit. There's been some steps towards making us a more progressive attacking side this season. The coach is probably the biggest element of that, though, and getting that right is really going to make or break everything. Now, it's been a bit of a muddled rambling from me. I apologise for that, but when you articulate it in some shape or form, it really does go to show what a shit show Wolves have become after being looked at as such a well-run club. And while we have lent on those Portuguese sources for management and recruitment, player-wise and management-wise, at some point you're going to back yourself into a corner where, you know what, the well has run dry to an extent. I think we've reached that stage. I think we need to step away from that model, and having to do that mid-season is a slightly difficult prospect, especially knowing that the core of the squad is totally, reliance on that link. Do those players have the stomach for a bit of a relegation battle if it comes to that? Will they play on the basis that they know their agent is going to work in their interest to get them a move out of the club if things do go south and things start to go quite toxic? These are all things that you have to consider. And ultimately, I think at this point, it's a very, very concerning time to be a Wolves fan. I don't say that stuff lightly if I can. I try to give the club the benefit of the doubt where possible. But at this stage, the next move is going to be so, so crucial to the way our season pans out and how fans actually decide to kind of vent their feelings. And that could come on Sunday against Leicester. We don't know. And ultimately, results are just going to have to start coming up soon. And as it stands, Steve Davis and James Collins are the only people that are going to be responsible for that.